Hi everybody, and welcome to Satsang. A few people had asked why I wasn't playing the drum anymore, and I didn't have a good reason actually. So I decided I would just play for a minute or two here while we got started, while people were beginning to arrive. Welcome everybody. Oh wow, got quite a crowd here already. Just decided to play a little bit because I haven't done it in a while. While we were waiting for folks to arrive. Some people have actually requested it, much to my surprise. I think I'll use a little bit in the meditations as well. So hello all. Welcome. Trust you can all hear me okay. Sound appears to be good today, the sound gods. Yes, I am actually sitting on the floor today. I have sold all the furniture I owned. I've sold it all. And everything around me is in boxes because I'm leaving. I'm heading away in a bit. Next week, actually. Not sure which yet. Thursday or Friday, I think. And arrive at my destination, 2-3 days later. Maybe more. So, but thank you all for being here. Let me just take a quick look and some shout-outs. Liza, hello. Hello, Roberto. This is Roberto from Madrid, Spain. I am new at this. Thanks a lot. Wonderful. Roberta, new with me? Are you new to Satsang, non-dual teaching and the like? I'd be really helpful because when people are brand new to non-dual teaching, I'm gentle. I'm very gentle with them. I've got some old veterans here that can handle the getting smacked around a bit. John from Ireland. Hi, John. Rosario. Hello, GP. Thank you for your time. Oh, my pleasure. Charlie Haynes. Hi, I'm Charlie Haynes. Hi, Charlie. Nice to have you here with us. I don't think I've seen you before. October Paul. Good afternoon from Portland, Maine. Hi, October. Vanyashi. Good evening from Norway. Robert from Henderson, Nevada. Hi, Robert. Dave Rose. Hello, everyone from Massachusetts. Green Baby is in California. Hi. To you, Ursula. Hello all from Madrid Island in Portugal. Vanyashi. One of two. Can you talk a little bit about the jnanas? Nana? I'm not familiar with that term. Unless you're talking about jnana, Y-N-A-N-A, about the jnanas. I don't think I'm familiar with that. I find myself naturally abiding in the boundless space, aware of being aware, its awareness being aware of itself. Let's see. So when reading about the first jhanas, it seems more distracted than abiding in the stillness. Well, I'm not familiar with that term. You stumped me. you stumped me. I normally am familiar with all these different kinds of traditions and the like. But, let's see, the first jhana, it seems more distracting than abiding in the stillness. Well, in this practice, in this teaching, the the simple abiding in the awareness it is enough. Well, let's say that is kind of the last practice. The step beyond that is the inquiry. Your awareness being aware of itself. Who are you? What is it? Who is it that is aware of awareness being aware of itself? Now, this is not an infinite regression. It's not a mind game. Right? You see, the ultimate perceiver can't be perceived. You cannot perceive yourself. You can't see yourself, touch yourself, know yourself. So all knowledge, all experience, all perceptions are secondary. And the primary is the imperceivable. So when you're perceiving anything, it is being perceived by you. What is the you that is perceiving? That's the ultimate. It's you. You are the awareness, being aware of itself. It sounds to me, since this is the direction you're clearly going in, and the place where you appear to be anchored, you can put away other traditions, other practices, and that sort of thing. You don't really need them. And you may, the only thing that might be useful at a time like this is sometimes stuff erupts in the nervous system. As the sense of identity is coming back home, the nervous system can get disoriented because it has been operating on the assumption that this image that you held of yourself is actually you. And so there are some techniques that I use for reconciling with it, and allowing the nervous system to actually make the transition, so that the truth of your being is what gets made manifest in your human life. But beyond that, at this stage of your development, I can't say for sure because I don't know what that is, but at this stage of your development, you're basically already knocking on the door. There's nothing else for you to do. Beyond that point, it's effortless. You're simply abiding as the self and constantly trying, once attention has turned away from everything. The journey inward, it isn't like in here in the body. It is trying to see yourself directly. So attention withdraws itself from all the external stuff going on in the world. And as you do that, you see that you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, and you're not the sensations. That you're something prior to that which is perceiving them. But even then, there's still the residual ideas you hold of yourself. Little by little, they all fall away, and attention turns more and more and more away from everything. And the last place it stops is simply the sense of your own existence. You're aware of your own being. That there's just this intuitive knowing that's always there, and it's always the same, and it never changes. While all the rest, thought, emotion, and sensation, are constantly coming and going. This isn't. Well, that's clearly you. And then the final step is simply recognizing that even that sense of being is being beheld. It is being perceived. By what? That's the question. By what? Or who am I? Because obviously it's you that is perceiving it. So this is the point where the answer to the question, who am I, is self-realization. It doesn't come as a concept. There's no image, picture, anything. The mind is out of the picture completely. The answer to the question becomes yourself. Does that help you, Vanyashi? I'm going to scroll down real quick to see if you said something about what it might be. No. Okay, cool. Dun, 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 dun. David and Elaine, hi GP, greetings from Southeast England. Everybody, hope everybody's well. Hi Linus, in Germany. Ivan from Bulgaria. Ava, great to have Satsang. Yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks for playing. Oh, Jeff. Hey Jeff. Linus, receiving good vibes from your music. What's it called, the instrument? Oh, it's called a tongue drum. Because it's a piece of metal and the pitches are made by cutting out tongues, grooves in it to make like little vibrating tines, like, and that's where the sound comes from. David Rowe, that's an awesome drum. It's cool, isn't it? Anna Maria, hi, Anna Maria. Daryl Sanders says hello. Dale says hello. Hi, guys. Come calm with PD. I have been seeing repeating numbers and funny license plates that relate to my situation in life over the course of a couple years. So for the first time, I started studying astrology. And where are you? Come. I can't see if there's a second half. Not seeing a second. Oh, there it is. Maybe just jump down to the bottom. It says, I feel myself strongly not as a mine, but as an ness, an isness, or mensis. It feels pure, but I still feel emotions and have thoughts that I let be, even if they sound crazy and immature. I watch them. It's a big misunderstanding that somehow, as you begin to realize who you are, that thoughts and experience end. I mean, the fully enlightened masters eat, right? And they get colds, and it rains on them and stuff. It has nothing to do with that. It's identification with thought that ends, and not thought. When a thought can come and go and doesn't engage you in its story, and there's no sense of identity attached to it, it's just a part of life. This is just the dynamic aspect of consciousness. So you simply, the recognition that you are just that sense of being, that you're an isness rather than a thing. Right? It just may take a little time for that to truly sink in. You may find yourself identified again, because it's just a habit energy of the mind and the emotions. You may feel some harsh or intense emotions come up, right? If there's no story attached to it, then the arising of intense emotions is nothing but the arising of intense emotions. And it has no meaning, which means it has no stickiness, which means it creates no suffering. It's just a sensation arising in the body, and like all sensations, it will come and go. If there remains a sense of identification with anyone, right? Oh, I don't want this, I wish this would go away, I'm not spiritual enough, or I'm not enlightened yet, or any of the myriad thoughts that get triggered by the arising of a certain feeling. If those are believed, then the feeling is actually going to get perpetuated. But if they're not, then what is it? It's just a feeling. Right? You know, you can watch a football game, right? American or European, which, you know, or the real football, whatever way you want to look at it, and listen to all the announcers. The end of the game, it's 3-2, right? That's the fact. But they'll talk for weeks about why it's 3-2. Story upon story, this perspective, and the ref did this, and everybody in the stand is going to have a different view. There's emotional attachment to it, and so it's not just this team beat this team. It's It's this whole thing, right? Of course, that's the attraction of sports, is all identification. Without that, who would care? It's a bunch of grown men running around, kicking balls or throwing balls or something like that. So everything, when it has been dispossessed of the meaning, the arbitrary meaning that we give it, all of the suffering leaves. Because the suffering is in the story. It's not in life. Life does not have any suffering in it. So I hope that helps you calm with PD. And as far as seeing the numbers and funny license plate that relate to my situation, that stuff happens when we're noticing it. There's an energy flow amongst all of us, right? And oftentimes we can see reflected back to us something that's going on in our lives. It's perfectly natural. There's nothing esoteric or mystical about it, right? We are connected to everything. This is one energy flow that has countless numbers of forms, but the essence of it remains the one. Cheryl, hi from Pennsylvania. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Roberta. Interested in you and what you do. Oh, that's why you are here. Well, just listen up. Just listen to just hang out for a bit. It's a spiritual... Satsang is a forum for exploring the deepest spiritual question there is, which is, who am I really? And using various kinds of techniques and spiritual inquiry, a very precise form of spiritual inquiry, to dispose of, to push away, to see through all of the beliefs and assumptions we had about ourselves, and therefore acted out and experienced, that aren't actually true. That once you shine a light of scrutiny on them, they don't hold up. And for me, the deepest spiritual practice is self-inquiry. Right? It's also part of the heart. Right? It's not cold and intellectual. It's very much connected with life and harmonizing with life. So just listen a bit, and you'll get the drift of what we do here. So, Andre, hi from Romania. Hello, Andre. Numerology. Oh, you asked. Oh, I see. You're studying astrology and numerology. Is this okay? Well, I'm not the I'm not the cult leader going, you can't do this, right? You must do this. You can't do this. Whatever one gets interested in, because if some teacher comes along and says, don't do that, right? It's like God saying to Adam and Eve, don't eat that fruit. What was the first thing they did, right? Well, that looks pretty good. Eat the fruit. Wherever your inclinations go, if you are on the path of non-dual spiritual inquiry, it's very likely that looking at numerology and astrology is a distraction. There's nothing wrong with it. A good friend of mine is a world-class astrologer, and it's uncanny what she can do. It's uncanny. Matter of fact, she was two of the sitting presidents of her country consulted with her while they were in office. That's how well known she was, and it was uncanny what she could see. But she stopped doing it because people kept wanting to predict the future, and so it's not about that. Right? If you are not conscious, this is from her. If you're not conscious, she can predict almost exactly what's going to happen because the energy is in place. But when you become conscious, you become a factor in this, and now all bets are off, right? It's just like if consciousness, some kind of awakening doesn't take place in a person's life, they will simply act out their conditioning. The way a dog is trained, they spend their whole life acting out according to that training. And they don't have the capacity to question it. Okay? So we're the same way. We will live out a particular way of living, which is very predictable, right? Psychology does it as well. It's totally predictable until somebody realizes that they have been conditioned, which means I'm now conscious of the conditioning, which means I can now change it. I am no longer a slave to it because I am conscious. Right? So astrology, numerology, a lot of these things, enneagrams and all of that can be very useful. And I've seen people who are doing tarot cards and all that kind of stuff. But eventually, if you're on the non-dual path, you outgrow them because they're a concession. They're a lesser path. They're the Vijnana, Mahayana and Vijnana, which is the lesser vehicle. The greater vehicle is Mahayana, which is this, the deep spiritual inquiry into who you really are. Right? And in that process, you will become more sensitive. You will notice synchronicities. You will notice things that kind of harmonize. But don't be distracted. It's not about then studying that and how they work and how to make them happen. That's a distraction. It's just a byproduct, right? It's the wake in the boat. That kind of stuff does happen, but that's not why we do it, right? You don't get into a boat to make wakes, spin around in a circle. You get in a boat to go somewhere. And in fact, if you get too focused on the wake, you're going to crash into something, right? The wake just happens. It's just a byproduct of your own spiritual development. So there's no need to make anything significant out of it, right? Because there isn't anything significant about it. You are stepping out of the old conventions of thinking, so your world is bigger, right? Because it's our thought forms and it's our assumptions that have kept us like this. When those assumptions begin to break down, those walls start to dissolve and become increasingly transparent. You see that things are a lot bigger than you thought, and you are a lot more than you thought. So, 99 Sanchez. So I'm going to wash my teeth again. Wash my teeth and come back. Badam Tis from Linus. Don't know what that means. Nazarene, hi from Ireland. Hendrik from Lake Constant. Hi, Hendrik. Linus. Again, Yasmin. Hi, GP. Hi, Yasmin. Hi, Ayla Kowalska. Hello, Ella. Good evening. I'm Mary Sykes from Niagara Falls. Cheryl, is there a difference between I am and sense of being? Well, the sense I am and the sense of being, yes, they're the same. Your own sense of existence, right, is the sense I am. It's felt or intuited feeling. It's not really feeling because it's not a sensation or an emotion. It's something deeper than that. It's kind of an intuitive sense, but it's not a thought, right? It's something else, right? It's not thought, emotion, or sensation. But it is this very real sense of being. I am. Right? So the sense of being isn't an abstraction. It's your sense of yourself. Right? And of course, the only step beyond that is to recognize that there's something even more subtle than that is perceiving the sense I am. That's the absolute. And that is the unspeakable. That's the Tao that cannot be spoken. You cannot know that. You can only be that. And this is where I urge people to spend time, right? To just come to that place. That's the knocking on the door. You have no control over how or when that door opens. You just happen to be standing in the best place for it, to see it when it does. So, is that cleared up for you, Cheryl? The sense I am is the primary experience, right? Prior to that is pure being. That the only attribute of that is it is. Everything else is derived from the pure being, including the sense I am, or the sense of my own being. That sense, you can tell, is secondary because something has to be there in order for the sense I am to arise. So that sense I am is the most fundamental perception one can have. And it is from that sense of I am that the entire universe has sprung. So in one direction of the I am, you have the manifest universe. In the other direction, you have the infinite emptiness. And the infinite emptiness is what is. In other words, you. Sanchez, when was your first realization of no self? Well, the earliest experience I had, I didn't know it as no self. I just kind of got lost in the question. I was about 17, and I couldn't figure out whether or not what I was experiencing existed independently of me. Right? Was this a dream? And I just got completely absorbed in that, to the degree that I didn't know. I realized that I could be dreaming this entire thing. So how do I know what's real? And I, for the longest time, just kept trying to find some evidence somewhere that what I was, that this, the world, everything, was objective. I couldn't find it. And it just shook me to my bones. And it had a very profound effect. I went from being very happy to miserable. All of the trauma of my childhood, because my mother was, was basically crazy. All the instability and all of this stuff, just horrendous stuff began coming to the surface. To the point where my best friend told me to go away. I didn't want to, I was such a dark human being, didn't want to be around me. And it was later, 2 years later, 19 years old, when I had the first major breakthrough. And I saw clearly the difference between myself and conditioning, and that self was absolutely innocent and pure. It's probably a couple years later before that sense of, I guess you call it no self, but just being nothing but God. I mean, I didn't know about things like no self. I hadn't exposed. I grew up in the 50s and 60s in the Midwest. There wasn't anything like this. And so it was more in terms of God, but God became not a being, but a principle, presence, and the like. And it's just kind of, it's grown from there. It's actually deepened from there. So that, sometimes there's nobody here at all. Sometimes there is, right? The point is that a sense of self can arise, right? And in fact needs to. I mean, there's a sense of self right now that's here that I am speaking through in order to have a satsang, in order to speak. But that sense of self I no longer believe it to be me, right? It's just something that arises for the moment, for the purpose of the moment, and then disappears, right? The question manifests the teacher, right? And when the answer comes, the teacher disappears. So there's no fixed self, right? In which case, well, then what am I? It's impossible to say. It's the Tao that cannot be spoken. So, Ivan, I was pondering on the subject of ownership. For example, my car, I was thinking, what is it exactly that makes this particular car mine? And then it hit me, nothing. It's just a mental agreement with the society, proved with a piece of paper. Both have nothing to do with the actual car. Brilliant. Brilliant. Brilliant, yes. It's completely a structure of the mind, arbitrary and meaningless. We created the idea of possession. You know, the Aboriginal first peoples of every continent, they had very little sense of possession. Things weren't mine, right? Everything was common. Yeah, you had your wife or husband, you had, a blanket or two, right? Later on the Plains Indians, maybe a horse. Right, but that was it, right? Land, the idea of owning land was just absolutely absurd. And it still is. I mean, how could we own land? Who owned it in the first place to be able to sell it? So it's just agreements. It's just an agreement we've made that's actually quite unstable and quite flimsy. So yes, you got a nice deep insight that our world is structured by thoughts, and none of it's absolute, none of it's real. It holds together by common agreement, and when common agreement begins to evaporate, as it inevitably does, right? Nothing can stay together that long. And a particular set of agreements, which we call governments and countries, begin to deteriorate. Well, then they try to they become more aggressive in enforcing the agreements, which is a sure sign that the entire thing is collapsing around you. It's not. It has to be sustained by common agreement, or it'll be nothing but conflict. So a brilliant insight, absolutely brilliant insight. Oh, did I skip some things here? Yeah, I guess I did. Dave and Elaine also wanted to say again how much we are enjoying your meditation series during this time of isolation. Have to catch them on replay. Listening to them in the garden, surrounded by nature, is wonderful, fantastic. I'm glad. I have been doing those. They're not regular. It's been regularly around 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, which is like noon in Eastern time, which is 4 Greenwich time or 5 in London. So thank you. Yeah, I've really been enjoying doing them. I was really surprised at how well received they are and how many people show up. It's really quite pleasing. Chris, hello GP. The outside world is constantly the same when I go to sleep. It disappears. When I go to sleep, it disappears. When I wake up, the outside world appears exactly the same, because my mind says, yes, there is an outside world. Yes. I mean, the only difference between the sleeping dream and the waking dream, is the waking dream has continuity. It picks up where it left off. If your dreams at night always picked up where they left off, right, you would not be able to tell the difference. You'd just be going from one world to another, and you'd have no idea which one was real, right? But this one is much more ephemeral. The night dream is much more ephemeral, and it's got its own little weird rules, and you can fly and you can become other things and the like. Whereas the waking dream has much more consistent rules. And so we've come to believe that as one of the proofs that this is an objective reality, and it isn't. It is completely subjective. As is the comment that Ivan made, that what's the nature of ownership? Nothing. It's just a thought. It's just something we all agreed on. The outside world, what's the actual nature of it? It's a thought that we all agreed on. We call it the world. And the world is like this, and water is wet, and fire is hot. And these are all agreements that we've made. Not on the same level that, like, the agreements about stopping at red lights or something like that. It's much more primary, but it has over time the view of the world. I mean, the view of the world 300 years ago is very different than now. 1,000 years ago, the scientific view of the world was the Big Bang and all that. Relativity, completely different than the world in which our very primitive ancestors, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 years ago, right? We believe in our modern world, we believe we are seeing the real world, the objective world. But it doesn't take much to poke holes in that kind of arrogant assumption, right? The world, it's constantly changing. Our view of the world is constantly changing. Very rarely does somebody actually make the point, well, you know what? Maybe the world isn't objective. Maybe it is nothing but flux. Maybe it is made of something else. Maybe it isn't this objective thing that we're going to discover. So, does that help you, Chris? Yash Siwa, speaking language I don't understand. Oh, from India. Hello, hello, wonderful. Glad to have you. What happened? Scrolled ahead on me too fast. Oh, there we go. Okay. Roberto says, I'm terrified to get coronavirus and end up in a hospital with all the suffering. I've had pain in my sternum and ribs around it, and in left ear and muscles around it. Thanks. Yes. The fear of it is far more debilitating than it, because the fact of the matter is the odds are extremely slim that you're going to get it. Right? In fact, highly, to the degree of being almost impossible, right? Unless you actually went out and sought it out. But if you're practicing the social distancing and and not just just kind of being keeping to yourself a bit, the likelihood is extremely small, which means that you're afraid not of a reality, but of an imagined future, an anticipated future. Now, we have all been trained to think like that. We have all been trained to expect the worst, to plan for the worst. That's how we have life insurance, insurance in general, right? Planning for the worst. Expect the worst. Expect the worst, or plan for the worst, and expect the best. It's kind of the idea. And so we've really gotten it out of proportion, so that we get terrified of our own thoughts. The first thing to do is start right here and right now. Do you have the virus? No. Right? I don't have it. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my body. Now, the fact that that is actually true should get more attention than a potential for getting it sometime in the future. But if our attention is constantly on the potential of getting it, then that's going to be filling our consciousness, and our body will react to that. The body will react as if it was really happening, that the threat was imminent, and it's not. This is simply a matter of overcoming our habit of focusing on a potentially bad outcome and ignoring this moment. The end result of that is really debilitating, because what happens is that even when you actually are safe and everything is okay, you can't enjoy it. You never feel safe, because there's always the possibility something could go wrong. And you know what? That's true. There is the possibility you could get it, or something else, or get hit by a bus, right? Or fall out a window. There's all sorts of things that could happen. If you make that the basis, well, it could happen, therefore I must prepare for it, you will never, ever feel safe or secure in your life. Even when things are absolutely perfect, you'll be waiting for that other shoe to drop. So start by simply going, what's here now? Yes, there's a possibility I can get it. I'm taking this precaution, and this precaution. It's the best I can do. Right? You can also turn off the news, which is just, endlessly, case after case after case of it, right? Which is actually not even accurate because of the way they report actual cases of deaths by the coronavirus. And this isn't a conspiracy thing. It just happens to be the way it works when there's some kind of an infectious disease, that if somebody dies and they had tested positive for it, the cause of death becomes the coronavirus, even if that's not what they died of. And in fact, a lot of the people who had died were already sick. And the real cause was something else. So if you go in and because you accidentally cut your wrist and you die from loss of blood, but you happen to test positive, the cause of death, they don't put down that it was wrist. So the amount of information, we don't really have actual information, which of course that's where the storyteller in your mind loves to jump in and create a story about it, because we don't like not knowing. Well, what do we know? Oh, right now I'm safe. I'm fine. I know what intelligent precautions to take. And I can't get rid of every possible possibility of it. So there is some small possibility that it can happen. Nothing I can do about that. And at that point, you're just centering yourself in what's actually here. You're looking at life as it really is. And then comes the practice, the work of disciplining yourself to stay present with what actually is, rather than the habit we have of speculating on what might be, and then spending our lives trying to prepare for what might happen, and never enjoying this moment where it is happening. And that's something you can use EFT as a help for that. When it goes off place and your body starts getting all upset, you can just tap. It helps. It communicates safety to the body. And believe me, there's no advantage to that kind of extreme vigilance. It doesn't help. It actually takes away. The more calm you are, the more intelligent you are, the more creative you are, the more resourceful you are, the more you're able to spot things. Bad decisions are made out of fear. So that's how you combat it. The fear that you felt in your body is completely a result of where your attention is going. Now, I'm not saying take your attention away from it and be foolhardy. You know what to do. You know exactly how to do it. So put it aside. You don't have to think about it anymore. And put your attention on what's actually here. You are safe. You are well. You are okay. You are taken care of. And you had the intelligence to know how to take care of yourself. You have the intuition to know what to do and what not to do. All of those things are your inner resources that you have infinite access to, unlimited access to. Mary Sykes, this morning during meditation, as I was about to fall more or less into sleeping, I became aware of a thought that I felt was not my own. I had the thought say that since we are in a financial crash, the next up and coming president will crash too. We're in a financial crash. The next up and coming president will crash too. This thought felt foreign to me, like it was not my own, but was someone else's. Can you tell me what that might have been? I've never had a thought as sharp and pointed like this one was. Well, thoughts are always going through your head. Right? They only stick when they get your attention. You notice that this one, you seemed to not originate with you. Right? That's probably the truth then. Right? Now the question I would have is, what is it about that thought that got your interest? Is it the content of it, or was it just the fact that it didn't feel like it was your own? What I find to be best, especially when you're on this path of non-dual inquiry, the less story you make out of these things, the better. You may have been picking somebody else's thought. You may have been picking up a thought of somebody important in politics or something. Well, they think they're important. They're not really that important. The fact is, the truth, the absolute truth is, no thought is yours. You are the silence in which thoughts come and go. Right? Because of a sense of identity, we say, this is my thought. But as we were talking about earlier about my car, right? It's an idea that this thought somehow belongs to you, rather than just being the nature of consciousness that thoughts arise, because that's consciousness. It has things that it's conscious of. It's how it's conscious of itself, right? So what I would do, if it's important, if this thought is important for you to know, it's something that you're being called to act on in some way, then what you simply do is you sit with the thought, right? You look at it and you simply say, why are you here? Is there something for me to do here? Or are you just wandering? Are you just the tourist? You're just wandering by, taking selfies. That's the way I treat everything that comes up, right? Why are you here? Do you need something from me? If the answer is yes, what is it? If the answer is no, it's like, great, have a nice day, and you're done, right? But just let the energy communicate itself. Things like this can grab our attention, and we become really interested in it. They can seem kind of mystical and esoteric, and then take on an importance that they don't actually really have. If there's something important, you just give it a moment. Say, if there's something important here for me, just give it a moment. And eventually a feeling will be there, yes, and what that is, or no. In which case, story ends. There's no more story. There's no more need for it. Right? Anne, hope all is going smoothly with your move. Yes, it is. Thank you. Swaran Jain. Hi, GP. This is Swaran Jain from India. I have no words to say thank you for your guidance. Thanks. Oh, you're so welcome. Yash Suwash, sir, this awakening process of realizing ourselves and the world around us has really made me struggle to lead a life in the orthodox society that is so materialistic and greed-driven. Yes. Yes. It requires allowing such a deepening into the heart that first off, the materialism and greed doesn't touch you. Right? And when Buddha used the word greed, and even the word suffering, he didn't mean it. He didn't use it just in the extreme. Right? So when he used the word dukkha, or suffering, he was not referring to just this horrible misery. He was referring to discontent, any discontent. And when he used the word greed, he didn't just mean the huge avarice, right? The income inequality that the world is really suffering under, just horrendously right now. That's big, and that's greed too. But the greed comes from the sense that I can be made happy by something external. The tiniest inclination that something out there will satisfy me is greed. And so you eradicate it from yourself, right? For instance, you said, made me struggle to lead a life in the orthodox society that is so materialistic and greed-driven. Right. The fact that the society is materialistic and greed-driven is not what's creating your struggle. The struggle is you believing that the materialism and greed is making you struggle. Your belief is doing it, and not the circumstances. Again, the story I love from Nisargadatta of the sage, and the man was one man was speaking to him, listening to him, and said, "Sir, I resonate so totally with what you're saying, but truth be told, I'm always experiencing suffering." To which the master shot back without hesitating, "Nope, you are not experiencing suffering. You are suffering your experience. If I'm experiencing suffering, there's nothing I can do about it. If I'm suffering my experience, I have a choice in the matter. I'm looking at materialism and greed, thinking it should be different, wanting it to be different, and then creating my own inner distress because this is the way the world is. This is what's happening right now." There's nothing in any circumstance that makes you struggle. Only you do that, by the meaning and story you attach to the circumstances. All circumstances are neutral. All of them. The thing that makes us suffer is the meaning we give them, and that is completely here. That is completely within the mind. If the meaning of something was inherent in the thing, everyone would have exactly the same experience with that thing. Everyone would be struggling with materialism and greed, including the materialists and the greedy, right? Because if it was inherent in it, it would always create suffering. But it doesn't. Which means the suffering is in the perceiver, not in the perceived. Now that's good news, right? Because that means I can stop suffering anytime I want. My belief that that is making me struggle is what's making me struggle. Not that. It doesn't matter what that is. You see it, you acknowledge it, and you can also see how destructive it is. You can see the pain it causes people. And that inspires you towards greater compassion, because even the greedy are suffering, right? The power elite that have so much power and so much wealth that are just living in greed, they're not happy. There's no correlation between wealth and happiness. Whether it be poverty or greed, going with or going without, it's the same. It's absolutely the same. They're two sides of the same coin of greed. So it has nothing to do with your internal stability and happiness. And that's the big realization. No, I mean, I look at the world and I see what's going on, right? And sometimes I do get kind of like, I can just feel it, just the utter unfairness of it, the utter cruelty of it. And I think there's a certain degree of righteous indignation that's appropriate, even for the very spiritual, even for the spiritually awake, to say, you know what, that's bullshit. That shouldn't be happening, right? I mean, values are not relative. It's an absolute truth that the more loving something is, the better it is. Period. Right? War is never right. Right? Never. Right? It can't be justified. Right? It's always greed. Always. It's always presented as some righteous cause, but it's always greed. Right? And so it needs to be condemned. It needs to be shown for what it actually is. But the only way you can do that with power is that when you yourself have transcended the impact of it. If you're suffering around it, you're just going to create more conflict with it. You shouldn't be greedy, and now this is going. Right? But if that's gone in you, and you recognize that virus is still in someone else, it doesn't affect you. Matter of fact, it empowers you to be able to make it clearer and clearer and clearer that greed leads to death. It's a deadly sin. It leads to death. He who lives by the sword dies by the sword. and that there's no gain in it. and so you're freeing yourself first. Is that clear, Yash? Thank you for that question. It's beautiful. Calm down. No, come calm with PD. Do people have awareness when they are identified with thoughts? I can't remember what it was like to be identified. Well, very good. People have awareness when they are identified with thoughts? Well, of course. Awareness is what you are. The identification with thought is perceived by what? By nothing? No, it's perceived by awareness. The recognition that awareness has always been there is the disidentification with it. And you see that that even the one who was identified with thoughts was itself a thought appearing in front of the awareness, which has never been touched by any of the thoughts. There's no existence without awareness. So you can't say, does someone have awareness? Well, first off, no. No one has awareness. Awareness has everyone. It's the other way around. Awareness is not a personal attribute. It's not something you have. There's not you, and then you have this wonderful quality of awareness. Right? If that's the case, then what's aware of you? Right? Awareness and you are the same thing. It's not an attribute. It is being. Existence and awareness are the same thing. Being and knowing are one. The knowing is being. So you don't have awareness. It has everything. Right? Everything appears in, and is made of this awareness. And that awareness is what? You. The one hearing my words right now. That's it. That's the ultimate absolute awareness. It's that simple. But we go right on by it. We're looking for this, mystical thing. It isn't mystical. It's you. You're the one hearing my words. Isn't that consciousness? Well, that's it. Right? But if you can't remember what it's like to be identified, wonderful. Wonderful. It can just vanish like that. Yeah. But recognize that even the thought, I can't remember what it was like to be identified, who's that I? Is that a subtle sense of identity there that you might be missing? Who can't remember? And of course you remember that you were, right? So there's a thought. But the awareness that is aware of the thought that says, I can't remember what it was like, is the same awareness that was there when all the thoughts of identification were present. And that's just it. That's the awareness. The content has shifted, nothing more. And the people that you're talking about that have the awareness or don't have the awareness or identify with thoughts or aren't identified with thoughts are also just appearing in awareness. So they too are just images in the mind being perceived by awareness. Let your sense of identity sink so far into that sense of awareness that it embraces and encompasses everything, including the apparent other and the apparent other and their identification. So, wonderful, wonderful. Vanyashi said, yes, that was very helpful in confirming. Thank you. You're welcome. October Paul says, I have a burning desire to awaken. God, I love those words. But my mind has been very intense, and I haven't been able to go deeply into meditation. How do I make my senses subtle again? Okay. Slow down, calm down, lighten up. Right. I have a burning desire to awaken. Wonderful. Just be with that desire, right? Now that desire was not invented by you, was it? You did not create that. Right? It's just kind of taken you over. Right? It becomes more and more the only thing you care about. Right? Now, when that happens, there's an enormous shift going on inside, because we have decades and lifetimes of habit energy that's got a momentum going. And so there's going to be pushback. Stuff is going to come up. Now, when you say, my mind has been very intense, what is it that is recognizing the mind and its intensity? And the thought, I haven't been able to go deeply into meditation. Right? Who has recognized that? Who's witnessed the fact that the mind seems very, very active and intense, and then there's this thought there, which is actually a belief, I haven't been able to go deeply into meditation. Right? It would seem then, you would think that somehow meditation was the eradicating of thought. The meditation as I teach it is, put your attention on that which is aware of the mind being very intense. Rather than making an issue out of the mind and its intensity, and letting that get all your attention, oh my God, what am I going to do? And the whole story that would go with it. Whatever this happens, so what, right? So there's a thunderstorm going on outside. The sky doesn't care, right? And without the sky, there could be no thunderstorm. So let your attention go to who's perceiving this. To whom is all of this appearing? Right? And could it appear if that wasn't there? Well, of course it's appearing to you. So now become interested, more interested in, well, okay, who am I? Okay, so it's intense now. Who cares, right? But who am I? And the mind may even be trying to distract you and the like, but who's aware of the mind trying to distract you? Right? Right? You're never away for a moment from awareness. You can't be. The mind just makes a picture of you separate from awareness. If you buy it, if you purchase that farm, then you're going to feel that. And you're going, how do I get back? How do I get back? Well, who's witnessing even the thought going, how do I get back? That's it. That's you. You're the one witnessing it. And what's happening is you're getting more and more sensitive to the way the mind works, the subtlety, the subtle level on which it works, and how it's always constantly producing a person. This time it's a person struggling with this, which intense thoughts and not being able to go deeply in meditation and wondering, how do I get back? How do I make my senses subtle again, right? It's all a thought. This is all the activity of mind. Right? Can you see that? So who's witnessing it? Boom, turn towards that. Notice that there's just a sense of existence that's always there. And it isn't intense. It's not chaotic. It doesn't come and go. It doesn't have to go deeply into meditation or shallow in meditation. It doesn't have to make itself subtle again. Right? The mind will hook you by presenting this idea that somehow the mind has got to go into abeyance or quiet or become cooperative. Otherwise, you're not meditating. Otherwise, you're not there. You're not getting it. You're just going to be stuck with your desire to awaken, and you're never going to awaken. Right? You don't awake. The guy in the dream doesn't wake up. You wake up from the dream. Right? And what wakes up? Awakeness wakes up. Awareness wakes up. Consciousness wakes up to itself. That is, it no longer believes the story created by the mind. And who's that it? You. Right? You seeing the mind story as a story is consciousness awakening. That is the awakening, or awakeness awakening to itself. So everybody do this. When things come up like that, where does your attention go? It gets intense because the mind is trying to get your attention focused once again externally. Now, externally, I don't necessarily mean out here, in the physical world, but for you, thoughts are external. Clearly, because you're the one looking at them. So they're removed from you. But the mind is wanting the attention to go there. Right? It's not that the mind's an entity trying to mess you up. It's not a devil. It's habits, nothing more. It's just the momentum of habit. And every time we succumb or make a big deal out of it, we strengthen the habit. Right? Well, if we don't become conscious and challenge the habit, if we just keep going along with it, which most people do because they're not conscious at all. Right? But you become conscious, you go, there it is, there's the habit. You just got stronger and it just got weaker. Right? Bring your attention back to what you actually know, not what is appearing as content, but what actually is. And what is? Myself. I am what is. Does that help you, Paul? So you don't have to make your senses subtle again. Just notice how you've been seduced in letting your attention go off into a story, and all you have to do is bring it back to its source, right? Which is you cognizing attention even when it's going out, even when no matter what's going on out here, realize that you're here. And it couldn't be happening if you weren't here. And we're interested not in what you are experiencing, we're interested in you. The one having the experience. The one to whom it is appearing. That's the one I want to meet. Come calm with PT. Does everyone know they are conscious and feel their own presence? No. Everyone is conscious. Everyone does feel their own presence. It's just been, when we talk about do they know they're conscious? Are they conscious of being conscious? Well, self-evidently not, right? They don't know what that means. Everybody is conscious. They experience conscious all the time. They just have no idea what it is, right? Or how important it is, or how significant that's what it is. It's just kind of taken for granted because it's so ordinary. Right? And nobody's, unless you've started down a spiritual path like this, nobody's ever bothered, nobody's been able to tell you, this is important. This is a place we need to look at more closely. This is more important than what's going on in the world. Right? But nobody tells you that because they don't know. My family didn't know it. They couldn't tell me anything about it. So something got in. And I go, whoa, look at this. This is, the more you look at it, you go, my, how is anybody missing this? This is like, it's like everything. So everything has the sense I am. Everything. Right? A blade of grass, it's a sense I am. There's a sense, and we all have it, and it's all the same I am. Everybody's name is I, right? Some people know it. Some people don't. Most people don't, right? So just be really grateful that you do, that you've heard the Dharma and have responded to it, and be enormously compassionate with others, and they'll see your light, and you might be the light that breaks somebody open. Is awareness just like ASMR video, being fully relaxed, hearing, seeing, but from a place of silence? Well, rather than me describe it as something, like we're talking about awareness, as if it's something other than you, right? I can't describe it. I can't describe what it's like to be you, can I? Right? I'd have to be you in order to describe it. Right. Are you aware? Right now, are you aware? Now don't put anything on that. Don't say aware of a certain something, or I'm pure awareness, or I'm, the super consciousness, or something like this. Are you aware? Forget of what or any content. Are you aware? I'm assuming you're answering yes. All right. So in between the time I asked and you answered, where did you look? To be able to answer yes. That indefinable place is awareness. Yes, the experience can be one of experiencing everything from emptiness. It doesn't mean the experience is always going to be, nice, rainbows and dolphins. It can be incredibly intense. But you, pure awareness, are not disturbed. Disturbances happen, right, to something in the play going on, but not to you. So you're not listening from a place of silence. You are the silence. You are the emptiness. Awareness simply is and can never not be. It is the truth, and the truth can't become false. That which is never becomes that which is not. Only that which is not can become that which is not, right? That which is can't die, because it was never born. So don't look at it as a certain kind of characteristic, like I'm relaxed, because whether you're relaxed or tense, it is being registered and cognized by exactly the same conscious awareness, is it not? Right? That awareness is what you are. So it doesn't, let's not try to describe it like it's something, right? It's you. Right? We're learning who you are. You are discovering who you are. Right? So the best way to do that is to explore directly your own awareness. I say it to your own awareness because it appears, it seems as if it's an attribute of you. But the more you explore it, the more that attention goes in it, you find that the sense of it being a you and sense of being awareness as being two things just collapses. And there's nothing but awareness. But as yourself, not as some attribute or something we are analyzing, but the intimate, personal Buddha knowledge of awareness as your very nature, as yourself. Not someone with awareness, but awareness is the being. Does that help, Andre? Did I point you in a good direction? Lina says, I recently felt some shame, unrequited affection, and nervousness, but I can also feel the comfort from an empty place. The feelings above can even be enjoyable to some extent. It's so subtle. Wonderful. Yes, that is a very beautiful and deep sign of spiritual maturing. That the sense of identity is rooting itself more. It's getting more established as the quiet emptiness, which allows for all sorts of things to come up. Shame can come up, right? You can feel it. Old traumas, all sorts of things come up, and in fact, they need to. They need to come up and be cleared away. It frees up the energy system. Even some nervousness, because the nervous system, nervous, right? it's responding to things in the environment. You're becoming increasingly conscious. Those reactions, or maybe even eruptions in experience, don't touch here. So even what what would appear to someone to be just absolutely horrible can be neutral or even pleasant, because it's the experience of life, right? All of life. If you want to know in ecstasy, you need to know grief. You can't have one without the other. That's the nature of life. But you are that which perceives both the ecstasy and the grief, which means you're beyond both. That's the emptiness. It's the indescribable place. They call it no self, or in Buddhism, or emptiness, shunyata. They call it the self. They call it Buddha nature, Christ consciousness. All these names for this indescribable place, this indescribable essence. The best name for it is me, because it's you. It's just yourself, without anything extra added. You just are. It is being relegated to perception. Oops. Did I miss something before that? 99 Sanchez. Let's go back. Got so many questions I can't keep track of them. I'm not sure what that's referring to, 99. Sorry about that. Is it being related to perception? It is being related to perception? Can you ask that question again? I'm a little confused about it. Dave says, yes, I agree with Dave and Elaine in that I'm enjoying your daily meditations on YouTube. Thanks so much. Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome, Dave. John Xian, GP, I was walking my dog today, enjoying the scenery. All of a sudden, this old thought about a very hurtful situation appeared, inviting me into suffering and story. I saw it as egos struggling for energy. It passed in a minute or so. No suffering, no story, no white water of thought. Perfect. Oh my God, perfect. Yes, that's exactly it. You actually saw that energetic pattern, which we call the ego. Remember, the ego is not a thing, right? It's not an entity. There's not little being in there, right? Right? Who's the self-sentient being in there. It is simply a very persistent and subtle and very complex functioning of thought and emotion. That's what the ego is, all around, revolving around the false sense of I. The awakening shows itself by revealing the ego as the ego, which means the only way you can see the ego is that you're standing apart from it. So now it pops up, this thought comes up, and you can feel simultaneously with that thought, that you can feel an energy that wants to identify with it and go into the story. But now you know the only thing that does is create suffering, and the story isn't even true. It's a fiction. It was made up. Even if, based on true events, maybe there really was something there, but we don't suffer from events. We suffer from our story. But you saw it. You saw that energy needing your attention, because without your attention, there's nothing there. It has no energy of its own. It's not self-sustained. Only you are. If you give it the attention in belief, in believing it, you've just plugged that fan in and it's going to spin. But if you unplug it, that means you don't give it that attention. You don't get sucked into the story. Well, the fan just slows down and stops. No white water of thought. Fantastic. Fantastic. Sanchez says, your story is so beautiful, but at the same time, I could feel the pain you suffered in your teens. Oh, really? All the way up to 19, I was suffered constantly. It was horrible. I was just always on edge. It was just the way it was. My earliest memory in my life is about 18 months or so, and I got tied into bed, into the crib. My very first memory is hanging upside down
They tied my leg into the bed so I couldn't get up. And I tried to crawl out of the crib, and I didn't know it was there. And I hopped down, it grabbed me, banged my head on the side of the thing. I remember seeing stars, and I was screaming. My brother was screaming, who was in the same room with me, and the lights go on, and put me back in the crib. And I basically was tied into bed for the next 4 years. So, needless to say, I did not feel safe. I did not feel at home. I did not feel loved. And so I suffered a lot. Yeah. Until so much so, and I had so little interest in spirituality, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's all I cared about in my teens. That it took an intervention. Not from somebody, from some high, and it just kind of took me over. And because I was at my wit's end. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to live. I was just so done. But oftentimes it takes that to crack the shell. I consider it worth it. Jay, hi G. In your experience, oh wait, we got somebody who's actually made a donation, so I have to give them precedence. Little glowing thing. Thank you, RV. Wonderful. What are the nuances when considering your state of being separated from circumstances, but also following your joy by acting on it circumstantially? Can the being state be indeed completely separate? It's not separate. When we're doing a meditation where we're bringing our attention away from everything external, it's to clarify. It's to disidentify, because it's all muddled up. Our sense of being is all muddled up with the stuff we want to do and the stuff we want to have and leading our everyday life. And this is not the path of being a monk. This is, you're not going to go out into the cave or in a monastery, vow of celibacy and vow of poverty and all. That's not this path, right? But you are separating yourself. You're separating. You're not physically separating. When I say separating yourself from circumstances, the sense of self, right? So that you can begin to see yourself not identified with, not in relation to circumstance, but just you, right? Not in relation to anything, right? I mean, you can see yourself just considering relation. You're a father or a mother, you're a son, you're a brother or sister or son or daughter, you're a friend, you're an employee, you're an employer, you're a client, you're a customer, you're a teacher, you're a student. These are all roles, right? And the sense of self is a role that we get into and we get stuck there. That sense of being a person is simply a role we take on. When we really had to take on, it gets started very early. It's a role we take on because it's the most effective way to be in the environment in which you're living successfully. By successful, I mean you survive, right? And so we take on that role, but then we get stuck there. We think that's who we are. So the practice is simply withdrawing that sense of self out of circumstance, out of identification, out of the flow of thoughts and emotions, so you can come to know yourself as you actually are. It's not a withdrawing from circumstance like you never do anything in the world, right? Of course, knowing who you are doesn't change the fact that ambitions will arise, aspirations will arise, great ideas will arise. I mean, this is an idea, right? Doing this, right? I don't have to do this, right? It's a desire that arises to share what I've experienced, and I write music and I play things. The difference is I'm not attached to it, right? If I can't do it, I can't do it, right? If I can do it, I do. I'm not defined by whether I get what I want or not, or I'm successful or not, right? Because I now know who I am. I've separated from that. So these circumstances can go on, they can happen, right? But they're not my identity. I'm the invisible, unknowable essence that makes everything possible. And so once that's seen, there's no conflict between fully engaging in life. Matter of fact, you'll engage more and better. It'll be more enthusiasm. Things are more vivid. Things are more interesting, and because they're free of suffering, right? So we're separating. You say, can the being state be indeed completely separate? It isn't separate at all. It's one with all of it. But we're clarifying it. We're separating it as an approach, so we're clear as to who we are, unmixed with anything else. I just am. But then that same energy just turns around and begins to embrace the whole world, the whole universe, actually. And then that separation, you find, was just the step, right, towards realization, right? And then the next step was the complete subsuming of the entire universe into yourself. And then there's no separation at all. There's nothing to be separate. There's only you. But not you as you think you are. The you as you really are. Okay, back to you, Jay. Hello, G. Hello, G. Where'd you go? Complain about this all the time. I just start scrolling a little bit, and for some reason it just jumps down to the bottom. Sanchez, it's beautiful because everything went full circle, and now you're helping young people like me who are struggling with similar things. Oh, wow. Yes. Yeah, it's pretty great. What can I say? And I do have to say, I'm really overwhelmed and touched and gratified to see younger people really absorbing this path. It's just wondrous for me to behold. Very gratifying. When I was, when this stuff started happening to me, there were no, self-help hadn't happened, right? This was like, when I was 19, it was 1971. It was 1969 when I had that first experience. There was no self-help. There was, there was a couple of books on the psychology shelf in the bookstore. There was even a section, right? It was a shelf for psychology, and there was like a couple things in there, Think and Go Rich, basically. That was it. Course in Miracles hadn't been written yet. Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra were nobody knew who they were. They hadn't published anything yet. I mean, the whole movement had yet to happen. So to be able to do my part to put good teaching and guidance out there and have it so universally accessible is fantastic. And it's even more needed now because it's so easy to get this information, but there's not a lot of teachers, right? It's one thing to have access to the information. It's another thing to know what to do with it, right? Because it can be it can really get, without proper guidance, the ego is quite capable of adopting non-dual language and making a nice concept out of it. So it takes guidance and pointers. So, hello, G. Finally getting to you, Jay. Sorry. In your experience, is your attention always on awareness when you are engaged in the world? For example, when you're watching your granddaughter, is your attention on the emotions that arise? No, it's not. It's not a practice, right? I am the awareness. Everything arises in awareness, including the emotions. I'm with her. I feel her. I enjoy her. It's just there, right? Now, it's useful, right? I mean, there'll be times when I'll notice that I'm aware of being aware. And sometimes I'm just present, right? And as you're really becoming anchored in this, whenever you think of it, oh yeah, that's right. I call it undivided attention, where you realize that you're aware and all of this is going on, and it's just you're referring back now to yourself once again. It's only when you feel a sense of suffering that you know that identification has gone outward, right? Attention go outward, but if there's no identification, it's just experience, right? The identification and beliefs turn it into the story about it, and this is terrible, and this shouldn't be happening, or this should be happening, or what's wrong with you, what's wrong with me, that kind of stuff. So it is useful as you are becoming increasingly anchored here. So whenever it pops up, you go, oh yeah, that's right. This is going on. And of course, every time you have a sense of attachment, or a feeling of discomfort, it's time to stop and take a step back. And and just kind of let that be there, not get engaged in the story, and just recognize where your true position actually is. All right, I'm the witness of this, right? And little by little, you just won't get hooked as much, which have a profound effect on your everyday life. But that's not the end of the show, right? It's going more and more deeply into that sense of being till there's nothing left but that sense of being. And now you're ready for the last step, which is that which is aware even of the sense of being, which is itself completely indivisible, irreducible, ineffable, inexplicable, unknowable. It's just me. Me, not mixed up with anything else. Or you, not mixed up with anything else. Cheryl says, different awakened spiritual teachers have different points of view on the current COVID situation. Some have a more red pill point of view. Others believe the MSM. This confuses me. MSM? Well, it's both, right? Anytime you take a position, you're wrong, because positions are transient, they're temporary. The non-dual path is the path of no position, or recognizing the infinite position. The only position that there is you, right? So I just look at it very practically, right? I know there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Some doctor in Japan just recently claimed that it was manufactured, right? And of course, powers that be are going to use this to fight each other or blow each other up again or something. That's inevitably what happens. I'm awake to all of that. I'm awake to the fact that in the reality, there's no such thing as a virus. It's a mental construct, but everything is a mental construct. But I'm not going to go out and talk like that, because very few people are ready to hear that. So instead, say, let's find out who we are. Let's just get more and more in touch with who you really are, and you'll find the absolute invulnerability of who you are, and the imperturbability of who you really are. In the meantime, just be reasonable. Take precautions, right? Just play along with the game without fear. And you just kind of watch as this all unfolds. The story of humanity, just like the story of an individual life, is unfolding, right? And it has its own destiny. It has its own purpose, right? When you're not identified with it, when you're not tied into it, it doesn't have the same kind of impact on you, right? It doesn't make it necessarily, this wonderful, beautiful thing that's happening, because right now it's not, right? But this is what's required in order to shake people enough to wake them up. People want to wake up from a nightmare. They don't want to wake up from a nice dream. So we got to have a bit of a nightmare. And this is not the end of it. There'll be more waves of this. There'll be more waves of other things. There's going to be economic stuff. There's going to be environmental stuff. Because it's just going to keep going until we wake up in mass. So I take it all in, right? But early on, in my spiritual growth, I got into the whole New Thought thing, right? Metaphysics, the unity, Christian Science, um, and they all have a real big emphasis on physical healing, on healing. I won't go to doctors. Well, Christian Scientists don't. Unity will. They won't even go to a doctor. It's got to be purely spiritual. And I practiced like that, and I was successful. I did those kind of healings, but the emphasis, began to realize that the emphasis was off. People weren't seeking the truth; they were seeking comfort. It's like, that's not how I got there. It wasn't because I was seeking comfort. I wanted freedom from suffering. So there can, I long time ago stopped putting out there, no, it's all in the mind. It's not real. We can heal this and the like. I mean, every now and then I will put something out there to help bring people back, but the emphasis has to be on knowing who you are. The emphasis has to be on discovering the truth of your being. If you discover that, you immediately recognize that you are absolutely imperturbable. You are untouchable. You are invulnerable. You were never born. You can't die. Nothing can threaten you. And even if the body gets sick, so what? If it dies, well, yes, it's going to. This body is going to die. Am I? No. I know that. I know consciousness is not dependent upon the body. And that's the freedom of it. The body can do what it wants. This human life can do what it wants. The world can do what it wants. It can fulfill its destiny. I will remain as I am. And so my emphasis is always on, who are you? You know who you are, the rest will take care of itself. You will become whatever the world needs right now. And you don't have to figure out what that is. We don't have to, we don't have to say red pill, blue pill, that kind of thing. You'll find the most gentle, direct, heartfelt, easy ways to bring people to a higher level of engagement and a higher level of freedom. So, is the confusion gone now? Cheryl, please let me know. Yeah. If my explanation has not alleviated the confusion, then I'm not done yet. Robert Bakery says, I thought that presence would be binary. Either you're aware of thoughts or you're lost in them. However, I'm finding that this is not true. There seems to be varying depths of awareness. Could you explain this, please? Well, there's various... Awareness has no depth. It's just infinite. Everything is awareness, right? You're aware right now, right? It's always there. We couldn't be having a conversation if it wasn't, right? You're aware of thoughts. You're also aware of being lost in thoughts. Now, the attention and the insight, I was lost in thought, may come later. But when you were lost in thought, were you not aware? It's just a deeper insight showed up later, more conscious insight, that said, oh, I was lost in thought. But that entire time, weren't you aware? So what's happening is the sense of I and consciousness is beginning to shed the shell of being lost in thought. But awareness is never lost in thought, right? Because if it were lost in thought, there'd be no thoughts, right? You have to have awareness there for there to be any thought at all, right? So, so there's no depth, there's no increase or decrease, there's no flux in awareness. What appears into awareness does fluctuate. And when you look at this as the spiritual journey, consciousness is emerging to be conscious of the moment the hook shows up that would bring you into the place of unconsciousness, that is, identification with the thought. That consciousness is shedding its beliefs and its identification and returning back to its source. The sense I am is becoming liberated from that and coming back to its source, the awareness which has never ever been sucked into anything. It is simply being. right? Because obviously without the awareness, there'd be nothing, right? So it's always there. So what we're talking about is the going in and out, the depths, or not the depths, what you said, the degrees, the depths of awareness, or the degrees, is all the emerging consciousness, the awakening consciousness, right? Awakening to itself as the awareness that's always been there. The more your attention keeps going back to the awareness, realizing it's never not been anywhere, and this is who I am, the faster that process takes place, until it just explodes in self-realization. Does that answer it for you, Rob? Jay. Oh, from whatever she does, like when you tell her she can't do that or this, are you absorbed in the emotion? No, not at all. This is Jay. I didn't see the second half of Jay's thing when he's talking about me, my state of awareness, like when I'm playing with my granddaughter, when I have to tell her you can't do that or this. No, not absorbed in it. No, and she's little, so when she hears no or I can't do something, and she starts to cry. You can see, oh God, it breaks my heart. Of course, right? I have to do it anyway. It has to be done, right? You're not unfeeling. I'm aware of that emotion. I'm aware that I wish it could be different. I wish I could make it different. I'm also aware that I can't, and that this is what you're supposed to be feeling right now. This is the natural feeling to be going through that. Is that there's nothing wrong with it. This is life. Right? What do you do when you feel overwhelmed in activity? If I feel overwhelmed in activity, I stop and I withdraw and I look at the overwhelm. It's a sensation. That's all it is, right? There's a feeling, right? Maybe of agitation or something that comes up. But if you don't call it overwhelm, right? Overwhelm is a story. It means this is too much. I can't take that. Well, it's already there. You're already taking it. So it's not true. Right? Right? It's really it's really a way of saying I don't want to feel this, right? I can't take it. I don't want to feel this, right? But if you just take that away and say, of course I'm feeling it. Why would I resist it? I'm already feeling it. It's already in. It's pointless to say I don't want to feel it. It's silly. So you feel it. Right? And if you're just with the sensation, with no story, there's no such thing as overwhelm. It's just a sensation. Some sensations are light and free. Some are intense. Some are pleasurable. Some are painful. But they all come and go. And who are you? Right? There could be no pleasurable or painful, intense or easy without you there to perceive it. But you're also perceiving the thought that says, this is overwhelming, right? But you're right there perceiving the thought that says it's overwhelming. If that thought isn't believed, are you overwhelmed? The sensation is there. If the thought never occurred to you, I'm overwhelmed, would you be overwhelmed? No. So it basically creates a story, calls it overwhelm, creates resistance because it doesn't want to feel that, and now you suffer from the imaginary, the resistance created by this imaginary idea of overwhelm. You just, which means I don't get overwhelmed. I can feel it, right? But there's no story, right? Right. I emphasize this over and over and over again. Spiritual awakening does not mean you don't feel stuff. It means that it doesn't leave a trace. You're not attached to it, nor are you averse to it. You feel all of life, even more so. I feel love more intensely now than ever. Affectionate love, right? Very human, very personal love. I feel it more than ever. Right? So, there's no resistance to it. Grief, I feel more than ever. Right? The fact, my sister hurt herself, and in my childhood, I give her the credit for me surviving. She was 13 years older than I, And she actually moved out when I was only like 5 or 6. But she was just always this place that when I went there, I could be me. I felt it. And it was kind of like this one little lightning rod in the midst of all this other chaos. And she hurt herself. Oh, and she broke a shoulder and I think it was a knee at the same time. Really weird fall. Now she's 13 years older than me, so she's in her early 80s, right? And a fall like that, just the thought that it's someday I'm going to lose her, it had me in tears. Of course. Now I know nobody's really lost, right? She's not going anywhere, but that form is going to go, right? This form is going to go. That everything and everyone I love is going to go, right? I feel that. Of course I feel that. I agree with that. I feel it because they matter. They're important. That's love. Now, I know it's temporary, right? And you can't hold on to anything. So there's no suffering in that. So instead, it's the pure feeling of love, of something that matters. When you realize that its temporariness is what makes it so precious, right? This moment's never going to come again. Moment with a particular person or friend or lover, it's never going to come again. If we really realize that, we'd never argue, we'd never fight. Right? No, this moment's too precious. I'm not going to waste it on that. We would find the way to resolve all differences. Right? But somehow idea that they're always going to be there. We end up taking things for granted. That's unconsciousness. So this is not a path that leads to some kind of an abstract place where nothing matters. Okay, Richard Haskell. Oops, YT. Okay. Roberto, I'm going through a panic situation because I'm terrified to get the virus and even have... Oh, I already saw that one. I think I answered that one before. The panic is being created not by the virus but by your mind. Okay? Understand that. So the panic is there. Breathe. Breathe very deeply. Put all of your attention on your breathing and become aware of the images that your mind is creating. Those images are what are causing it. Turn your attention from those images. Now, the belief you've been saddled with is, I got to pay attention. This is really important. I got to pay attention to this. No, you don't. You panicking isn't going to improve one bit your immune system. It isn't going to make it any less likely that you'll get it. It does no good whatsoever. So turn your attention towards what does matter and what will make a big difference, and that's your own peace. And that can only happen by constantly bringing our attention back to this moment. And out of the obsession with what could go wrong. But for many, and maybe you, it has become so habitual that it doesn't feel like you can stop it. Well, you can, right? It may just take an effort, right? Because there's so much momentum headed in that direction. But the more, if you see just a little bit, that just doing that a little alleviates it. A couple of conscious deep breaths will begin to calm it down, right? You'll want to go back to that calm place more and more often. And if you get that the images in your mind are exaggerations and they're not real, you'll have an easier time turning away from them. And eventually, with grace, because you're being supported in doing this, they'll end. Right? It will end. Right? And when you get afraid, it's because there's actually something to be afraid of. And it won't be irrational, it won't be made up, which means you'll feel it very, very rarely. Carrie Brogan, good morning. Good morning to you. Nazrin, I'm doing the meditation on body awareness in the Inner Reconciliation course. It sometimes brings repressed energy to the surface. That it is exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Nazrin. That's exactly why I created it. If you can be with the body awareness and the repressed energy comes to the surface, and you don't get engaged in it, you don't get into the story, you don't let it take you over, you stay in the place of that enlightened witness, that's the environment of healing. Those repressed energies will be liberated, and that's what healing is. David, hi G. Any thoughts on why we have resistance to doing inner work? Oh yeah. I can't think of a time when meditation or journaling hasn't helped. Yet I often feel reluctant to try. Mental or physical block. Look, if you're successful with your meditations, the mind is no more. The person you think you are will not exist anymore. That person you think you are is an energy pattern very ingrained in the nervous system. And the nature of the nervous system is to maintain stability. So if it's gotten to a stable place, it doesn't want anything to rock the boat. It's like a gyroscope. Knock it over, just going to stand back up again. So it is resisting the meditation because the meditation is challenging its fundamental premise. And if you do that, it starts feeling a little wobbly, right? And maybe even start feeling afraid. It's going to start pressing all the buttons that it would normally press to get you into line. And so you're going to want to meditate, and this feelings are going to come over. Oh, this is boring. We don't want to do this. Let's do this instead. Throw a rock in the bush, right? Squirrel, right? Anything to bring your attention away, right? It's a distraction, right? It is the attempt by the egoic mind to maintain itself. Now, I explain it as a mechanism, not as a thing, but you can think of it, it's like this, an energy, it's not an entity, but it's kind of like this thing trying to protect itself, and what you are doing is basically undermining it. You're pulling the rug out from underneath it. And every time you go deeply into meditation, the mind's days are numbered. And this creates an instability in the entire system. So what I recommend you do is when you meditate, put all your attention on that resistance. Be completely present with that trying to distract you. And notice how the entire thing is happening right in front of you, the awareness. Right? Are you the activity of this resistance and distraction and all of that? Are you that which is aware of it? Right? So even when you say, I can't think of a time when meditation and journal hasn't helped, yet I often feel reluctant to try. Who feels reluctant to try? Who's the I that feels reluctant to try? You have enough experience in non-duality to get my question. Those of you who may be new to this, that may sound like a funny question to ask, but if it is, just let me know. I'll try to explain it. Who feels reluctant? Or is just a feeling of reluctance arising, and you're saying, and with it the thought that says, I feel reluctant. Who's that I? Right? Is that I the awareness that's aware of that I? Obviously not. And where are you in this? What's your position here? You can see it's a fraud. It's not true. That I doesn't exist. There's just a feeling. Right? The moment you see that I doesn't exist, you have disidentified, and your attention sinks naturally back into the place of awareness, which is where you actually are. And that has no reluctance in it. There's no resistance whatsoever. Green Baby, GP, what do you think the best way to achieve a very healthy self-esteem and self-confidence? Know who you are. Look, if you're acting out a version of yourself that isn't actually you, how can you feel confident? And that's what the problem is. You know, people, sorry, it's always the same answer. Know who you are, right? You have a certain self-image, and that certain self-image has a certain level of self-esteem and confidence. Now you can labor to improve that self-image, and you can do practices to more self-esteem and gain more confidence and that sort of stuff. But there's a limit on it, right? There's a limit on what a version of you that's not actually you can be. The egoic mind is unstable and insecure by nature, and it's also unhappy by nature, right? So if you're trying to give the ego self-esteem, it's impossible, right? Because its nature, the only thing it can get is conceit. It can't get real self-esteem. It can't have real confidence. It's always fake confidence, right? It's always imaginary confidence. It's always the appearance of confidence. And some can get really powerful, right? So they're not intimidated by things. But as long as that self is the ego, the imaginary self, it's a house of cards. It will come crumbling down. Know who you are. The infinite awareness that you are is infinite self-esteem. It values itself enormously, infinitely. It is infinite value itself. And of course, infinite power. It's nothing but confidence. That is, it would manifest itself. It's beyond confident or non-confident. It's everything there is. Right? Ambition is to turn everybody who is looking to improve themselves in self-help to say the most direct path is to go who you actually are. Rather than trying to improve yourself, discover who you are, which needs no improving. It's already perfect. It's already completely unbroken, pure, innocent, powerful, creative, resourceful, intelligent. What you actually are. The idea you hold of yourself, right, is a reduction of this. And yes, you can change that idea you have of yourself and make it more confident. But why not just completely dissolve it and be with what you really are, which is infinite confidence, infinite self-esteem. The self-esteem with a capital S, right? Turn it into an existential quest. You know, the mind may say, and people may say, oh, yeah, I know, but that's esoteric. That's kind of out there. We need something really practical. What could be more practical than being who you are? And how can you be truly happy and confident if you're not being who you are? If you're pretending to be somebody else, even if you're pretending and don't know you're pretending, how can you possibly be confident? You can't. You can only be confident by being who you are. And you don't have to try to be who you are. You simply discover who you are. It's effortless. It requires nothing to be who you are. You're always showing up as you. That's infinite confidence. Does that help? Green Baby? Oh. Come calm with PD. I sometimes feel like a spiritual being inside a body. What do you feel, GP? Are thoughts formed by the brain? Am I formed by the brain? Where do thoughts and I reside? Brain is a thought. It is normal to feel, even when you begin to have a sense of who you really are as a spirit, as being, not a spiritual being, right? You're not a spiritual being. There aren't spiritual beings. There is only being, and that being is spirit. Right? Our experience is of the manifestation of the infinite beingness is what we feel as a body. But that's a feeling, that's a sensation, that's an experience. I'm experiencing things. And I have the illusion, you have the illusion that you are in a body. But that's an illusion. Anymore, if you're in a virtual reality thing and felt you're in a different body, it's an illusion. You're not in the body at all. It's in you. And this imaginary boundary that we call the skin, with sufficient intensity of inquiry, will dissolve. Right? So yes, I feel the body just like you, but I know I'm not in it. It's just a feeling. And you can interpret that feeling as I'm in a body, or you can interpret this feeling as I'm having an experience, and that the thing on the other side of the room is right here. Right? Because it's all within consciousness, and consciousness is not bound by this body. Look at everything that that is in consciousness, right? It appears as though some of them are outside what we call this boundary, but it's in consciousness. Divorce consciousness from the perimeter of the body, and you experience all of it within you. But the habit of thinking of yourself as being in the body, and most people believe they are, or they believe they are the body, which is the strict materialist, all of that, those are all just the beliefs we've been saddled. So it can take some time to pierce through that illusion, but it is an illusion. It isn't real. No, thoughts are not formed by the brain. Thoughts arise. The brain is a thought. The brain does not think. The brain is not consciousness. This is the big schism. The non-dual consciousness is primary. The materialist, matter is primary, and consciousness is just an artifact of matter. Right? Everything is a material structure, and consciousness was just kind of an accidental byproduct of this, happened to be becoming this complex. The non-dual approach is exactly the opposite. There is no matter. There is only consciousness. And all the forms are not made out of matter. They are made of consciousness. Everything we know is in, perceived by, and made of consciousness. So the sense of I that you have is not the brain. It is not in the brain. It has nothing to do with the brain. The brain is simply another image in the consciousness that has no boundaries. It is simply consciousness made manifest as a form. Mary Sykes, the thought was not important, but it felt like it was being downloaded to me from someplace, very different from the usual thoughts during meditation. GP, you got kudos from my husband and son who are listening to you now. We're all home together. My husband says you're the best when he has heard of any teachers that I have been listening to. My husband says that you are speaking from the now. Oh, well, say thank you to him. Thank you very much. Yeah, just check in with the thought. Let the thought. Don't try to figure it out. Just ask it. Are you here for a reason? It's so simple. It's so simple. We don't ever have to figure anything out, right? It's life is more than happy to lay it out for us. We invent these people in struggle, and it's all in our mind. We've completely invented the entire thing. Andre says, when I go to that place, my heart starts pumping very hard, and I want to cry, so I distract myself by going a jog, running away. This must be the place you were referring to before. Let's see if I can find it again. Let's see if I can pick up on that thread. Or did I miss something? Oh, maybe just the place you go. Right. Right. Don't be worried. When you start meditating and truly start approaching the true self, right? And some fireworks start going off in the nervous system. Don't worry about it. No problem, right? It's not going to kill you, right? Energy gets released. Things adjust. Stuff happens. Go ahead and cry, right? Right? Don't distract yourself, though. You can even get up and go for a walk. Sometimes your body just needs that to help release that energy. Fine, but don't distract yourself from it. Do this. Sometimes I have to take a walk. I have to move sometimes. Just the body needs to move, so you let it move. Energy has to move, so you let it. Right? But this is the mission, to find out who, once and for all, who you really are. Don't let anything dissuade you. Even a total eruption of something in the nervous system. Don't let anything dissuade you. There's nothing more important than this. This is the most important thing you can do. This is the step into eternity. Sean, war is never justified. What about the case when we need to defend ourselves against forces of evil? The last time there was a war that actually had justification was Hitler, because he was an empire and he was trying to conquer everyone. Right now, the United States is the empire trying to conquer everyone, but it's not overt. Hitler was overt, right? We're overt. We're much more demonic about it. You might say it was justified, right? Were there ways to avoid the world wars? Absolutely there were, right? But we defined ourselves by war. We say defend ourselves against forces of evil. The only force of evil you have to defend against is the one in you. And what is evil? Darkness, unconsciousness, ignorance, lust, greed. The three poisons. Ignorance, delusion, and greed. Right? They're the cause of war. Right? What is war about? We want to turn it into this righteous thing that I'm defending myself against somebody else. Right? And they're evil, right? So I have the right to defend myself. All the evil in the world has been done by that kind of ignorance, right? Ignorant. Hitler didn't see himself as evil, right? The U.S. doesn't see itself as evil, just greedy. Right? So, on one level, if there really is an obvious act of aggression, and it really is defense, right? And you ward it off. On that level, you can see it. I can concede there may be a time when a concession like that has to be made, but I prefer Christ's point of view. Love your enemies, bless those that curse you, do good for those that despitefully use you and persecute you for my sake. For this, thus they persecuted the prophets before you. Christ chose not even to defend himself when he had the right. Didn't declare himself in no argument whatsoever. He gave up his life for his brother. If Christians took that to heart, we would not make war. And we would find a completely different power that would protect us. We assume that if I don't have weapons, that I can't protect myself. That's nonsense, right? And so we even get the idea that somehow, Jesus, when he comes back, needs our army and nuclear weapons. What, you kidding? God needs your army, right? That's delusional. It's all delusional, right? We really need to take to heart, Christ said, love your enemies. How often should we forgive somebody? 7 times? 70 times 7 times was his answer. Now, a literist would start counting, and once he got to 491, he wouldn't have to forgive him anymore. But that's not what he was saying, right? That's not at all. He was pointing out forgiveness means finding them innocent. They're unconscious. They don't know what they're doing. End of story. It takes 2 to make a war. And they can't conquer you. You don't need weapons. You need to know who you are. You need to be in your heart. Gandhi proved it. He proved it. The English gave up and left his country. The conquering, occupying nation left his country. He didn't fire a shot. It was simply the power of conviction and nonviolence, and they couldn't deal with it. Right? You have to be so careful that, because every country justifies its position. Oh, I'm defending myself against evil, the evil ISIS, and the evil Al-Qaeda, and the evil terrorists, and the evil communists, and the evil socialists, and it's evil, 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 which is the justification for the most horrendous things to do. And it's all okay because they're evil, right? No, there's no such thing. There's only ignorance. Right? And, be careful. Be careful. Pick your enemies well. You're likely to become like them. So, can I disidentify with emotions? Comes from lyrics. Oh, you absolutely must. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have them, right? Of course you have them. Life is felt. We wouldn't want to have life without emotions. We're not Vulcans, right? We're not reptiles. We want to feel. Everything is about feeling, right? Do your emotions define you? That's the question. If an emotion comes up and there's a whole story around it, and and it becomes a drama, or it becomes something you resist. I don't want to feel it. I don't want to feel that. You've basically created you've created a connection, a relationship to that emotion, so that now it has a meaning that you've given it that it doesn't actually have. So if so, why do I feel like I am the emotion? It's just a feeling, right? It's very intimate, of course. We feel, right? Right? But who's feeling it? Excuse me a second. Oh my goodness, I'm way over. Who's feeling that emotion? There's the emotion, and there's some awareness of it. Now, which one is the I? Are you what you're looking at, or are you the one looking? So an emotion can come up and it can be very intense, and that's okay. Where are you? You're the one aware of that emotion. So you're not the emotion. You can't be. You can't be what you're perceiving. And boom, right? The emotion comes up, and there's these other thoughts and feelings come around. I don't want this, or I really want this, right? I hate this, I love this, right? That's all laid on top of that emotion. Right? It's not in the feeling itself. The story that gets triggered when that feeling comes up is not in the feeling. And where are you? You keep stepping back behind the lens. That sense of I don't want this, right? Well, wait a second, hold it. The thought, I don't want this, is also on that side of the lens. I'm witnessing that thought. And is it true, right? This feeling is just a feeling. That's all it is. Without any additional story on it. Does it create suffering? Is it important? Does it have meaning? Is it significant? Is it intense or mild? Those are all labels we put on it. Oh, it's intense, which means I want to get rid of it. So you can see how it cascades, right? So it feels like you have the emotion. Actually, it just means that it feels intimate, and there's a belief that is attached to it, forms a relationship to that, of wanting that emotion or not wanting that emotion. Drop that and just let it be there. And that's disidentification from there's no relationship to it now. It's just a feeling running through the system. It may be significant, may have a use, may be valuable, maybe not, but it isn't you. You are always the consciousness that is aware of it. And You can live without that emotion. It can't live without you. It has no existence without you. So it is completely subordinate to you. I hope that helps. I am way over time now. 2 hours and 15 minutes. Let's see. Just says hi. Calm says, I'm starting to feel the outside world as myself. I get glimpses of that. Good. Wonderful. Thank you, Jeep. I shouldn't take thoughts too seriously. Yeah. Just chill. That's the problem. We get hooked in the thoughts. Oh, like the story is really true. It's made up. Good grief. What a crowd. Well, I had more people here than normal. Over 80 people at one time here. Let's see. Hey, gee, what should I do during financial trouble? I've decided I'm going to leave so-called essential job indefinitely because I no longer feel safe there and my health is more important. In the short term, I can live with my folks, but I'm not sure where my life will go after this. I do have passions that I haven't been following, so maybe it's finally time to do those. Yeah. You just notice that you're making the classic choice between safety and freedom. And your job, which offered financial safety, is offering health threat now. So you're kind of, right? So it kind of ups the ante. Health safety, financial safety, and my desire to be free. Don't give it to your mind. Take it into your heart. Right? Whenever I've had important decisions to make, I see there's two things there. I know that I'm not going to make a choice. That the choice is just going to happen. And my job is to make sure that the environment is so pure and so clear that the entire thing can harmonize and flow, and I'm not inadvertently influencing it. So you just take the whole idea in. Stay with my job. Just imagine yourself staying with the job, right? Because you could stay with your job and be safe, right? It's possible, right? Right? So no story about it. Stay with the job. Stay with the job, and just see what it feels like. And then go, okay, leave the job. Stay with my parents. Okay. And go. Then picture yourself maybe acting out one of your passions or something. And just keep going back and forth with all of those. And if something else should pop up, well, bring that into the mix. Don't take a position. Don't take sides. Give them all equal time and just let life unfold itself. And the way will become clear as long as you remain neutral, position free, not favoring one thing or another, or being intimidated by some kind of threat. Instead, just being very much the grounded center to the entire thing. You've created the atmosphere in which life will unfold itself in exactly the right way, and maybe even in a way you hadn't even anticipated. Paul says, thank you so much for helping me remember the self. You're so very welcome. Come. Just had a funny moment. I realized I'm playing a role and I'm consciousness. Well done. Or is this a trick of my mind? No, not at all. The role is the trick of your mind, right? You know, if you felt it and there was a humor there, yeah, you got it. Arby, I heard arguments that going into being state could be a form of escaping uncomfortable feelings. Any thoughts? You've never heard me say that. Have you ever heard me say, you don't want to have that feeling? I say, uncomfortable feeling, welcome them. The being state is simply knowing who you are. It shifts the perception of uncomfortable thoughts because there's no more identification with trying to get rid of them. Right? It's the exact opposite. Everything else is an escape from them. An attempt to fix them, change them, reframe them, make them different, overcome them, transcend them. This is not that at all, right? It's total immersion in them. It's exact opposite of escaping. You're going to who you are and letting whatever's there be there. And that letting it be there transforms it, which is the real power of healing. So, yeah, people who do not understand non-duality say things like that, right? Because they think, oh, well, you're just going into this being state. You don't want to be engaged in life. No, I'm going I'm going into the being state. I'm recognizing the being state because it's the truth. First off, it's the truth. I'm going there because it's the truth, and I want to know what's true, right? Not to get into a state, right? And if it's true, whether I'm engaged or not engaged, it's the truth. I accept the truth as kind of holding all the cards. But living from the truth, how could I possibly be any more prepared to be with the world as it is, right? How could I possibly be anything other than absolutely the best solution I could possibly be, right? So that's absolutely nonsense, and people who say that they've got a very, very mistaken notion of what non-dual inquiry is. Oh my goodness, I can't believe how many questions there are here. Brock says, please talk about when it seems I'm not focusing on the fan, but the fan seems to keep running. I seem to be frozen even though I don't give it a story. I just let it be there and it doesn't lift. Because you want it to lift. Right? Totally let go, brother. Totally let go. This thing has kind of pestered you for a bit. There's still this undercurrent of trying to make things different than they are. And that's what's paralyzing you. That's what's freezing the energy. There's still a conflict there, right? Go deep into the feeling of the freeze. Go deep into the feeling, what if that fan never stops running for the rest of your life? What if it never goes away, right? When you can say, I'm fine with that, you're free of it, right? And in this case, it may take that. You may have to get all the way to there. You know, in other places I've seen you go where it didn't have to get to that point, but it might in this one, because we don't know what the underlying thing is. And remember, freedom. Know who you are. You could take another step back too, right? I seem to be frozen. Who's frozen? Right? The one who's frozen is an image in your mind, right? Are you that image? Are you the one frozen, or are you simply believing all these thoughts that say you're frozen? Where are you in this, right? Are you that frozen I, or are you the ever-free consciousness that's aware of it, right? You can say, I just let it be there and it doesn't lift. Okay, the one who wants it to lift, the ones who letting it be there, is that also not something you are perceiving, right? Come all the way out, right? The entire scenario is being played out around an image of yourself. The one that feels frozen, the one that's focusing nothing has changed, the one who wants something to be different, right? Step back from all of it. Who are you? Are you frozen? Or is this just frozen content, you know, happening in front of you? That's the question. What are your thoughts on how the world began? How did the world begin? It didn't. Any more than a movie. Then how did a movie begin? Right? When you're watching a movie, what you're seeing is a real-time image being generated by the projector. It isn't a thing that exists in time. Time is the illusion. The world is consciousness projecting itself in a dynamic aspect, and it is happening now. How did the world begin? It is always beginning, and it is always ending. It never began and never ended. You could say it that way too. The world is not an objective thing. It is a projection of the mind. Therefore, it isn't other than mind, right? It is the mind. And what we call the world is simply form being constantly generated on the screen of the mind. Which means it didn't begin, or you could say it began now. And how? The nature of consciousness is to create form. And that's what it's doing, making form. Boy, I could go much more into this one. GP, could you speak about cultivating disciplines to help habits such as untidiness? It's possible to overcome tendencies effortlessly? Thank you. There's a struggle with creating order. Well, first off, take a good long look at why you want to do it. And see if you can find that there's a sense that, I'd be a better person, or there's something missing, or there's something wrong with me because I'm not creating order. That'll keep it stuck, right? Maybe it's a position, I mean, I have a hard time with it, right? I don't have a problem with it either. Right? So there are certain things I just, I've got to fit all this stuff in my car to make the drive next week, right? And I'm going, how do I do this? I have no idea how to do this. I wish I had somebody who was really well organized to help me. So it is. So first, let go of the feeling you have about yourself, right? Because it's untidy, right? Notice there's a self-image there. Maybe some self-criticism and judgment, or maybe you got scolded when you were a kid for being untidy, or maybe somebody in your life is always criticizing you for being untidy. First, go beyond that, right? Because if there's some energy in that, or some just your nature, you may just not be tidy by nature, right? In which case, there's nothing you really should do about it. All the discipline in the world isn't going to change that. If there's a desire to have more order in your life, you simply cherish that desire, right? Don't turn it into an existential problem. Don't turn it into a thing, right? Just if there's a desire for that, because it's helpful, and I have that desire, and there are times when I just straighten things up, so I have a nice, empty desk when I'm going to sit down and write something or work. I mean, I can't do that when I'm this. Look at you would not believe this amount of stuff that's on the other side of the camera that you're not. I'm sitting in a mess right now, right? It looks all neat. I've got my white wall in the picture, and right. So first, don't make it about you, right? Trying to use discipline to overcome something like that never works. Nobody can maintain it that long. So it's got to be much more cheerful. It's got to be a discovery. Discovering the aspect of you that does need or want a little bit more tidiness, and letting it come out. And in the process, it'll help expose any attachment you have to being untidy. A lot of stuff I did was simply out of rebellion, right? I was a rebellious kid, right? As well as miserable. I was rebellious. So if they wanted me to do it, I wouldn't. Or if they didn't want me to do it, I would. Simple as that. And so first get your heart free. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And with that, when it doesn't matter, very naturally you can find ways that just help you do more, help you feel more comfortable, create a space that's more reflective of you, whether that be tidy or chaotic. I mean, you walk into an artist studio, oh my God, it looks like total chaos. I know everything is, and it's all set up for the way they work. So you don't want an artificial definition of it either. This is self-discovery, right? And not just the ultimate self, but the self that's manifesting in this particular form, the unique beauty of this form that is you. Okay. I think, oh my God, I cannot... Oh, Dave Rose, I'm going to give this one a good book to read. Chris Hedges' book, War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning. Yes. It's not, the idea that we're fighting evil gives us meaning. Well, let's start drawing meaning from someplace else. Right? How about from kindness? Blessed are the peacemakers. How about putting that up in the Pentagon? Right? Big sign. Love your enemies. So, all right. Okay. Oh, Dora Study Service, Love and Peace from Tunisia. Oh, wonderful. Jordan Peterson can clean his room. I'm going to do it later. good, good for you. I like that. Uh, uh, oh, fantastic, everyone. Oh my goodness, I have so many. I can't even. Come, and it's already 2:30. I can't come near to helping. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you all for satsang. I don't know where I'm going to be next Sunday. I don't know if I'm going to be in my new place yet or not. It is my intention that if I am on the road, I'm going to stop for an hour or so, maybe a shorter satsang because I do want to keep going. But I will be doing something. If it looks like I'm not going to be able to do a satsang next week, I will make some kind of a video or something and put it up there. So thank you, especially the new people. That I saw some new names. Lefay says, it's so beautiful and refreshing to listen to you. Thank you, dearest. Oh, thank you. Very, very good. Thanks. A lot of thanks now. GP deserves a break. Oh, I'm actually energized by this. I could keep going all day, but I do have other things I have to do. Blessed are the peacemakers, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Amen. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. I think that's the way it goes. I think that's the right one. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. I can't remember them all now. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you all so much. Namaste. Oops, what happened? End broadcast.